Good morning. What an honor it is to be here at Marble Collegiate Church. I have got to just start out and say, you guys have the best kids in the galaxy. Yes? Let's give them a round of applause. Yes. Any church where you can say worm poop in the chancel? Honey, that's all right with me. Thank you so much for inviting me into your worship this morning, but most importantly, thank you for inviting me into your family. I'm honored. So a few years ago, my husband Toby and I were driving through Minneapolis, Minnesota. Elise knows all about Minneapolis, Minnesota. And by the interstate was a big billboard. And at the top of the billboard, it said, Minnesota Cremation Society. Which is just weird, right? Why would they advertise? Underneath that, there was a photograph of a casket, and underneath that, it said, think outside the box. Right? That is what we are going to do today. We are going to think outside the box. This is Stewardship Sunday. This is Gratitude Sunday. And I want to talk about both of those concepts outside the box a little bit through a bigger concept that I call generosity. And so I want to start out with a little story that lays the groundwork for this in our conversation. It's about a cabin that my husband Toby, he's sitting about midway back, has up in northern Wisconsin, up near the Canadian border. He's a Scandinavian Lutheran. I am a Scots-Irish Baptist. Our marriage is a miracle. Go figure. There it is. But every summer we go to this beautiful cabin, and we have the same ritual each morning. The first day we get there, we get up really early, and we make really bad, strong coffee, and we go out in the dock, and we fish. And we catch all kind of little fish, panfish, bluegill. We fry them up, make scrambled eggs, put cheese in it because, of course, it's Wisconsin. There's got to be cheese, blueberry muffins, the whole thing. Big old breakfast, lovely start to every vacation, except for 1 year. We had the same breakfast. We took our trash, the fish guts, the eggshells, the stuff, put it in the trash can, left. Well, two things you should know. Number one, there's no air conditioning in that cabin. And number two, it was 95 degrees that day. You see where I'm going. We go out, we run the errands, we come back, we get close to the front door and are just knocked over by the fumes. So we make up little gas masks of paper towels and run into the house and get that trash and take it out and throw it on, yes, exactly what Michael was talking about, the mulch pile. Now, some people may call it a compost heap. We in Wisconsin call it a mulch pile, and you heard all about it with the children's sermon. That place where you can throw trash like eggshells and fish guts and nastiness, where it starts to break down and decompose, and that trash eventually turns into rich, dark dirt that gives life to beautiful things like daylilies and begonias and tulips. Well, that afternoon, after we got over our trash trauma, I couldn't help but think about the words of the Apostle Paul. I mean, you never know where Paul's going to come to you, you know? And there are his words, get rid of all such things, the anger, the wrath, the slander, the malice, the trash, and clothe yourself in the new self, something beautiful. You know, there's Paul writing from prison 2,000 years ago to the church in Colossae, telling them, get rid of your trash, your false gods, your false teachings. And this morning, Paul reaches out 2,000 years later and asks us here at Marble Collegiate two important questions. Number one, what trash are you carrying in your life this morning? And number two, what beautiful new thing do you want to grow in its place? I mean, let's just think about that first question for a second. What trash are you carrying? You know, we all have trash to a certain extent, but here's the thing. Sometimes we don't even know we have it because it's hidden under and around and among years of maybe denial. We're just not even thinking about it. I mean, last spring, I threw my back out. I don't know if anybody's ever done that. Anybody got back, that wants to admit it, got back problem? You know how it is. It's very painful. You lay on the floor for days, and it's fine day 1, day 2. Day 3, it's bad because you're still in pain, and you've gone through all the back issues of the New York Times and every episode of Dr. Phil, and there's nothing left to do except lay on your floor and look around. Now, I feel like we're family, so I can share this. I'm not a good housekeeper. Just there it is, big weakness right up front. And the view from my floor is scary. So I'm laying there looking around, and I'm looking, and there's under my couch, oh my goodness, all kinds of leaky pins. There are dust bunnies the size of a small terrier. And then there was this mysterious orange cube that I later realized was a wayward cheese appetizer from a cocktail party a while back. You know, sometimes we got to look under the couch. We got to look under the couch of our house and our hearts to find the trash. And when we find it, we got to let it go. We have to let it go. Why? Because if we leave it in there too long, it's going to stink up our house. You know, what is it that Emerson said, Ralph Waldo Emerson? What we worship, we become. A friend of mine put it a little differently. He's an executive trainer, and he always talked about the 3 B's, the letter B. Believe, behave, become. What we believe up here over time drives how we behave, and how we behave over time drives who we become. We've got to let it go, because that's when the magic happens. When we let go of our trash, when we hand it over to a greater power, when we hand it to God, just like that fish gut eggshell mixture that transforms into something beautiful, our trash too starts to break down. It starts to transform, and eventually we grow something new in its place. I mean, let's just think about a couple of quick examples. What if, for example, we took the trash of selfishness and threw it on the mulch pile? Now, I see a couple of you looking at me like, well, I'm not selfish. For those of you who are thinking that, I have 5 words for you. Do not lie in church, okay? No. Just don't do it. We all have a little bit of selfishness in our lives, right? And if we were willing to let go of that selfishness, fling it on the mulch pile, maybe we might grow a generosity of means. And by that I mean sharing stuff that means something to us. A couple of years ago, I was preaching in a big Baptist conference in, yes, wait for it, Las Vegas. I mean, we just should stop and think about that. Yeah. Baptist in Vegas. You know, that's like putting Episcopalians in an improv troupe, right? It just doesn't work. So, you know, here I am, giving my little sermon, and then I'm standing at the pulpit, waiting on the offering in like Bali's casino, and here come the ushers with the plates, and they put them down, and among the dollar bills and the plates, honey, there are poker chips. But in Las Vegas, that means something, right? We got to give of what means something to us. And when we give of our means, something that means something to us, and we gather with others and their gifts, like we're doing today, great things can happen. I was with a good friend of mine, Dr. Otis Moss, who runs the Trinity Church in Chicago 2 weeks ago. We were together up in Toronto, and he shared this story. He talked about the number one cause of personal bankruptcy is medical debt. I did not realize that. The number one cause of personal bankruptcy is medical debt, and he said his congregation was getting hammered by medical costs as well as everyone in the community. So their church banded together and raised money, and banded with other churches in Chicago and raised money, and they raised approximately $38,000. which may not sound like that much money until you realize that you can buy debt on the open market for pennies on the dollar. So they took that $38,000 and bought $5 million worth of medical debt and forgave every bit of it. Letters went out across the country. Your debt has been forgiven. Go in peace. When we gather together and give of our means and gather with other folks who are giving with their gifts, great things can happen. But that's just one example. Let's look at another one. What if we gave over our baggage of, I don't know, stubbornness? The idea that we have to be right all the time. Oh, tell me that's not the problem with our country right now. I mean, we are so polarized. It's like the San Andreas Fault has jumped out of California and into the heart of every American. I'm right, you're wrong, end of story. It's like a greeting card I saw in LaGuardia Airport a couple of months ago. It had these two little 1950s ladies. They were smoking their cigarettes, and one says to the other, "All I know is one of us is right, and the other is you." That's America down to the ground right there. What if we could take that stubbornness and throw it on the mulch pile and grow in its place perhaps a generosity of intellect, the ability, the willingness to see all aspects of an issue, the ability, the willingness to listen to all voices in a conversation, the refusal to talk over others, the refusal to dismiss those who are different. I mean, think about how that would transform not just our personal lives, but our national debate. Great things could happen. Let's just look at one more. Let's throw a third one out. What if we threw out the trash of judgment? I mean, maybe some of you are struggling with an issue with a friend or a family member or a work colleague, something that you just can't let go of. That's some heavy trash. We'd do well to remember that the person who has the most influence in our lives is the person we can't forgive. Or what if that judgment perhaps is of a stranger who is different? If we gave up that trash of judgment, maybe we might grow, a generosity of common ground, the ability, the willingness, the yearning to find common ground. And brothers and sisters, there is always common ground. Since 9/11, I've been on a comedy tour with a rabbi and a Muslim comic. Don't you love it? And the whole theme is about common ground. And at the end of the show, the rabbi, Bob, sometimes ends with this story. And remember, this is a rabbi sharing this. He says, there were two rabbis talking, and one said to the other, "My son just converted to Christianity. What do I do?" And the second rabbi said, "Really? My son too. What do we do?" They said, "Well, let's go talk to God." So the two rabbis go to God, and they say, "Both of our sons just converted to Christianity. What do we do?" And God says, "Really? My son too." There is always common ground. So let us throw that trash on the mulch pile and grow a generosity of common ground or of intellect or of means. And that's just 3 examples. Honey, there are millions of examples, and I'd love to talk about every one of them, but I know that you like to get to brunch. So let me end this morning with this image, this glimmer of what things could be like, what they might look like. Last spring, I had the privilege of walking the Civil Rights Trail in Birmingham, Alabama, which ends at the 16th Street Baptist Church. Some of you may remember that on September 15th, 1963, the Ku Klux Klan planted a bomb under the steps of that church, killing a number of people injuring a number of people, but killing 4 little girls. The back wall of that church today that was destroyed now is a stunning stained glass of a black crucified Christ. And one of the members came and explained the imagery. There is this black crucified Christ, the right hand outstretched with the palm bent up, pushing away, letting go of racism and violence and hatred. And the other hand outstretched with the palm up, welcoming in the beautiful things of love and compassion and justice. And as powerful as that image was, what was equally powerful is the story of that window, because when the news of that bomb hit back in '63, the news went global, and an artist in a tiny town on the coast of Wales heard about it and decided he wanted to design a stained glass to rebuild that church. And instead of asking for 1 or 2 wealthy folks to fund that window, he capped the funding at ½ crown, which was about 15 cents, so that it would be a gift of the people. And so people came from all over the country to give. School children lined up to give their lunch money. And that little country, 6 times smaller than the state of Alabama, came together, they gave, and they helped rebuild that church. Why? Because they believed in something beautiful beyond the trash of hatred and violence and racism. Because they believed that a group of dedicated people could truly change the world. So they gave, and they came together, and that wonderful historic church once again rose up, and the gospel of Jesus Christ marched forward. Brothers and sisters, that right there is our call too. It's like the great civil rights leader Howard Thurman said, God has placed a crown above each of our heads so that we will spend our lives trying to grow tall enough to wear it. God has placed a crown above each of our heads so that we will spend our lives growing tall enough to wear it. Brothers and sisters, the only way we're going to wear that crown is to get rid of the trash that blocks it. What trash are you carrying in your life this morning? Join me. Let's let it go. Put it down. Fling it on the mulch pile. Join me in creating something beautiful and wonderful and new. Join me in walking out of here being refreshed and renewed and ready for change. Join me today to change the world. And brothers and sisters, I say, we start now. Amen.